Well, thanks for tuning into the Market Wrap. I'm Niraj Shah, and it turned out to be a rather torrid day for the markets if you were invested in the banks in particular. So I think the banks drove the markets lower, and that played its part. I think the broader markets too had a bit of an iffy day today. Remember, the whole of last week and the better part of Monday and Tuesday, you were actually at the market breadth doing much better. Somehow, in the last 2-3 days, and in particular today as well, you've had fairly skittish behavior at the broader end of the spectrum too. Let's revisit all of that. But first, for the Nifty first, and let's get the Nifty 50 up on the screen just to show what moved and what did not at the large cap end of the market. So you had the oil sensitives do well. We spoke about the possibility of this happening, and no rocket science that the ONGC is amongst the top draws today, simply by virtue of the movement that crude has had. There was some strength, and Maruti Suzuki Kotak bucked the trend as far as banking goes, and Reliance stayed put, which is actually great news. What didn't do well? IndusInd Bank, 4.5. Tata Motors down. IT dragged big time, and Wipro was a key culprit there, about 4% lower because of the acquisition that they announced, which is earnings dilutive. There was weakness in State Bank of India too, though I must say that it recovered a little bit in the last half an hour of trade. So all in all, the picture could have looked a lot worse if we would have maintained on the Bank Nifty and the PSU banks the levels that we had at about 3. It's just that the last half an hour proved to be a bit of a relief for some of those banks. All in all, not the best of trades, and I think the way the globe is looking, it may not be the most opportune time next week either, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, what stood out and what didn't within the large cap space. Nicky Johnson with the key mover of the session. Nicky, a bunch of stocks to choose from. Which is top of the line?
Well, I'm going to pick up something which is a laggard in the session, clearly Wipro, because after the announcement of big acquisition that came in, you sense some amount of discomfort among the shareholders community with regards to how the execution will pan out for this one, because a lot of brokerages actually went ahead and said that the execution will remain key. Investec said that they've reiterated the hold rating, but they slashed the target price a bit lower. They actually revised higher the target price to 440 as compared to 430 earlier. But at the same time, they said that the success will depend on how well Wipro is able to capture upon the downstream revenue of this newly announced acquisition. And they also said that they expect the acquisition to dilute IT service EBIT % by 200 basis points in the first year due to no charges on intangibles. And they expect this to be EPS accretive only by the year 3, probably because of which you saw that huge amount of profit selling coming in on that one. And perhaps the stock was down out by more than 4.5% in trade. But then what are you picking up in the broader space, Niraj?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what IT did at the broad end of the spectrum too, because the space at large had a bit of a gash, led largely by tech majors. I must say, around the world, I must say, Indian IT is slightly different than the rest of the world, so to say, but for now, it seems to be under pain. Let's get up the mid-cap end of the market up on the screen. As you can see, as I was saying, the market breadth didn't look good at all. A few winners. Let's start off with the winners. Motilal Oswal Financial Services, for example, stood out. Some of the fertilizer names individually, RCF, National Fertilizers, etc., did okay for themselves. We were talking in the morning about Deepak Fertilizers seeing some promoter buying as well consistently in the last few days. And Avenue Supermart stood out about 3.5% at 3286. Didn't do well. Well, Schneider, Apollo Tires, Aegis Logistics cracked big time in the session today. There was weakness in commodities. Sale, for example, cracked about 5.5%, much lower during the day, and then managed to pull back a little bit again in the last half an hour. There was weakness in some of the PSU banks in particular. Canada Bank is a prime example, but some of the others too came off. Like I said, Bank of Baroda down about 6%. A lot of others came off. So the brokerage notes are bullish, but that is not helping some of these PSU banks as well. Nicky, any reasons for some of the key movers today?
Yeah, factually, I'll just throw in some numbers because there are very little reasons why I can tell you fundamentally why the stocks were up. But V-Guard Industries, one of the top gainer that we had on the mid-cap index, the stock was up by as much as 4.5% in trade, and probably after 2 days of losing streak, some amount of traction came in on this counter. The volumes were higher, at 21% as compared to the last 20-day average. So clearly some amount of momentum also on that one. RSI was at 51, and most of the analysts tracking the stock have a buy recommendation suggesting a potential upside to an extent of 12%. What also did well, Niraj, in trade today was Prism Johnson. This is one mid cap pocket that we have in the cement space, which has been doing too well for itself. Now we remember that a few days back there were a few reports which suggested that cement players have typically taken a price hike. Now, do remember the fact that March is the month where most of the infra activities are at their fullest. I mean, they're in full swing, and because of which even the demand for cement is typically high in this month. South and East typically have taken a sharp price hike. There remains to be strong demand coming in. This is what Motilal Oswal channel check suggested, but it remains to be seen how does the whole so the space behaves after the Q3 performance. Of course, the outlook and the pricing commentary from these players after the Q3 results were pretty optimistic, but it remains to be seen whether they'll be able to execute on the kind of volumes also that they've been promising from a long time. But Neeraj, I'm going to quickly toss it back to you and ask you about anything that catches your eye right now, or how the hair and buy industry probably started with day with a 44% kind of a premium. So pretty fair, decent listing coming in on this one. But what are you picking up?
Yeah, I mean, IPOs is one thing, but I think Nikki, top of the mind for everybody would be what's happening to the bond yields, and uh, let's not forget what's happening to the dollar index as well. We were all talking about how the dollar index is gonna stay stagnant, and that might be helping the market move. We're looking at 92 or thereabouts on the dollar index, so DXY is something that everybody would be wanting to track, and that could add a little bit of volatility to the markets next week too. So keep an eye out on DXY, keep an eye out on what the yields are doing per se, and the non-farm payroll number today might be a big thing. So I don't think you will speak about the globe, but just keep in mind that these are a few things that everybody should be watching out for, and of course the stimulus that comes in next week. So we will dance as per the global tunes, and I think amongst the most important things aside of the yields is what happens to the stimulus announcement, how does it come, in which shape or form, and what it does. So probably that determines what the market does. But yep, as important as it is, by the way, MTAR, I think IPO, the subscription has been pretty robust too. So while we're looking at the markets correcting, the primary markets are probably doing okay. Nikki, anything on the IPO or global markets? How are they shaping up?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to speak a little bit about the steel stocks, because Neeraj, over the weekend, China is going to be coming out with production numbers, and they're going to lay out the plan as to how much do they intend to cut the production by, given the air quality issues that they're facing. And we have been hearing the news that JSW Steel has undertaken a price cut, ArcelorMittal has taken a price cut. So it remains really imperative to see if Chinese production if it's slashed more than what the expectation is, then again you can see HRC prices going higher, and by virtue of that, even domestic steel prices doing well. But that's that in terms of the domestic performance. What I would like to highlight at this point of time is the global performance, which is just like, if you look at the European markets, they're not doing too well. If you look at the US stock futures, they aren't doing too well. That's after Federal Reserve comments, which said that central bank is not in a hurry to stem the kind of surge that yields are showing at this point of time, because we're seeing some amount of profit booking creeping in clearly on the European market as a whole. But with this, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining in.